8:06 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Good morning to you, friends, along with Jay Harper. Johnny B is here as well, of course. I'm Dan, and it is Good Friday across Middle Tennessee, and I hope you are having a great Friday so far. I want to welcome on into the program State Senator Brent Taylor out of Memphis. Senator, always great to have you folks on. And you've got a bill that I highly approve of. As a matter of fact, you've had a lot of bills that I highly approve of. You don't know this, but I play your audio and report on your stories all the time. Now, I want to talk about this new one that you've got. And basically, what you've got is a bill that would make it a requirement for law enforcement to report someone's immigration status to the Department of Homeland Security. So tell me, what exactly does that entail? Does that mean if somebody is arrested, or what are the details?
Thank you, Dan, for having me. I'm coming to you live from Tennessee's West Coast, and it's a balmy and beautiful day down here, so I'm glad to be on with you. So, yes, this bill, several years ago when there was this push nationally to create these sanctuary cities, the General Assembly passed a bill that essentially authorized law enforcement to enter into an agreement with Department of Homeland Security and ICE that authorized them to report people that they know were in the country illegally. And so fast forward a few years, and what I realized was that many of the law enforcement agencies, although they had been authorized to enter into those agreements with Department of Homeland Security, many law enforcement agencies had not done so. So the purpose of this bill was to go beyond just merely authorizing them to do it, but requiring law enforcement to enter into these agreements with Department of Homeland Security so that when law enforcement has knowledge of someone in the United States illegally, that they report that information to the federal authorities so that they can take whatever action the federal government deems appropriate. That was the purpose of the bill.
State Senator Charlene Oliver, Democrat out of Nashville here, says the bill has some remnants of the past, comparing it to slavery, of course, slave patrols in Nazi Germany, where the Jews had to wear the yellow badges. That's got to be fun to respond to. How do you even argue with that?
You don't. You just move on to a more coherent point.
All right, then let's go to what Todd Gardenhire had to say. He was the one Republican to vote against it. Now, he had concerns about school resource officers being required to report immigration status of kids to local authorities and then turning over kids to immigration officials. Now, what's your response to that?
Well, again, for someone to be reported to the federal officials, the federal government has to have knowledge that they are in the country illegally. And obviously their mere presence in the country is an illegal act itself. Well, children, as you know, even when they commit crimes, they're never found guilty of those. They're just found delinquent. So it's impossible for a child to even meet the threshold for law enforcement to report them. Look, a lot of people spend a lot of time trying to think through this, to ask the what about questions. And this bill is really simple. And that is, if law enforcement has knowledge of someone in the country illegally, in more cases than not that they have already broken yet another law, they've been picked up for a DUI or they've committed some other crime, where they are engaging with law enforcement, where law enforcement would ask about their immigration status, that's the touch point that this bill is designed to deal with. It's not going out and tracking down someone who happens to appear to be Hispanic and ask them to see their papers. Remember, we all have a right as citizens. Just because the police officer is asking for your immigration status, we don't have to respond to that. We have the right to remain silent. We don't have to answer questions from law enforcement unless we're under arrest. And at that point, they are allowed to inquire about somebody's immigration status. So, again, the purpose of this bill was really just to find another way for law enforcement, when they have somebody who's in the country illegally that's broken yet another law, to turn them over to the proper federal authorities.
8:11 Nashville's Morning News on WTN. State Senator Brent Taylor is joining us out of Memphis. Let me ask you this. There's another bill from State Senator Brian, is it Ritchie or Ricky? I think it's Ritchie, that would increase the fine for someone who gets caught transporting someone illegally in this country to $5,000. It's currently $1,000. I guess that is still being discussed. I like that. What do you think? Are you going to vote for that?
Dan, I like it too. I voted for it in committee. I'm on the Judiciary Committee. That bill was under consideration, and unfortunately, I have to report to you that it fell one vote short in Judiciary Committee, and so it did not come out of the committee to make its way to the Senate floor. But I supported that in committee, and I believe that bill was by Senator Hensley from Lewis County.
Why? So let me ask this: in a strong Republican majority in the state legislature, why did that fail in the Judicial Committee?
You know, Senator Kerry Roberts, I should say, he had some issues with the way the language was written. He said he supported the bill, but was concerned about some of the language and whether or not it would cast too wide a net. So, although I understand his concern, my take on this was that to never let the perfect be the enemy of the good, and I thought it was a good bill. Was it perfect? Perhaps not, but I wanted to go ahead and pass it out of committee, maybe amend it before it gets to the floor, but even then we always have the option of coming back later and tightening the language if we find it's not right.
Yeah, I don't know. I get frustrated when I see good bills die in committee, and I think this was a good bill. You know, I know that we still have illegal immigrants obviously coming into our country and into our state. Is it the goal of the state legislature to demagnify Tennessee, to make our state as unhospitable to illegal aliens as possible, to make sure, just send that message out that we are not a sanctuary state?
It is, and the issue is that, you know, the people that are coming here, they're not looking to assimilate to become Tennesseans. They're coming here and expecting Tennesseans to change what we're doing to accommodate them. When I was on the city council in Memphis 20 years ago, the mayor at the time was creating an office of multicultural affairs, and the idea was that we would print government forms in multiple languages, and that we would have multilingual people to help the immigrants that were in Memphis that couldn't understand or speak English. And I voted against that all the way back in the 1990s because I made the point then, and it's still true, and that is we do not do immigrants any favors when we make it easy for them to function in America without learning the language. They will never benefit, reach the full potential of being an American if they can't speak the language and if they don't assimilate into America, or in this case, Tennessee. So it's not about making it difficult for them to operate. It's about helping them to be in a better position to assimilate and be able to take full advantage of all the opportunities there are in being an American. But the first step, Dan, is to come here legally and to be an American citizen, and we welcome anybody. Yep. Regardless of their background or where they're from. We welcome them to come to Tennessee, but we want you to be here as a citizen, not as an illegal immigrant.
Well, I believe any good conservative understands that America needs legal migration. Illegal immigration is a completely different story. State Senator Brent Taylor joining us out of Memphis on Super Talk 99.7. I'm going to ask you about another piece of legislation that you had that really triggered a lot of folks there in Memphis. But first, do we even know how many illegal immigrants, illegal aliens are in Tennessee at this point? It feels like it's impossible to know, but do we have any idea?
We don't. I mean, we don't even know how many are in the country, so it would be impossible to know how many are in Tennessee. I continue to hear rumors, Dan, that the federal government has sent some to Middle Tennessee, either through flights or buses, and that's concerning to me. And once we have where this bill that I have gotten out of committee, where this will have the full impact is if we have a change of administration, then law enforcement will be in a good position that when they report somebody, that the federal government will actually begin deportation proceedings on them. Right now, the current administration, this bill won't have a lot of impact because, as we know, this current administration is not going to do anything with an illegal immigrant anyway.
No, you're right. It's 817. All right, so you had another bill that made a lot of folks mad in Memphis. I covered this quite a bit, that would prohibit or disallow local city councils from usurping state law. This was about the Memphis, I believe, city council banning routine traffic stops for things like broken taillights and other minor offenses. Your bill would keep those in place. And what you said at the time was that the police in Memphis and in Tennessee, they need all the crime-fighting tools that they can get. Now, Memphis, it is in trouble. I mean, there's a lot of crime in Memphis. I know that you understand that, and you've been an advocate for Memphis. How can you help this city that you partially represent when you have a city council that, at least to me, just doesn't seem to get it?
Well, they don't get it, and there's, when it comes to the city council down in Memphis, there's no need to send in the clowns. They're already here. And they passed an ordinance last year in the wake of the Tyree Nichols murder that absolutely hamstrung the law enforcement from them being able to do their job. And we had all year for them to correct that, the city council to correct it. They didn't do it. So I corrected that this year with a bill that prohibits local governments from preempting state law. And it was signed by the governor yesterday. And so I'm glad that we are now able to take the handcuffs off our police, where we can put them on the criminals where they belong.
Did you grow up in Memphis, Senator Taylor?
I did not, Dan. I grew up in North Mississippi, but I got to Tennessee as fast as I could.
That's something that I say as well. If you don't mind me asking, when did you arrive in Memphis?
I moved to Memphis in 1989, right after I finished mortuary school. I'm a funeral director by profession, and as soon as I graduated from mortuary school, I moved to Memphis and have been in Memphis since 1989.
Mortuary school?
So I did. I'm an undertaker. I will be, Dan, I will be the last man to ever let you down.
Well, thank you for that. Interesting. I'll have to speak with you another time about that because I find that fascinating. Talk about from 1989 to 2024. Talk about how Memphis has changed and the reasons why you believe that Memphis has changed. Because I'm pretty certain that 1989, it was a vastly different Memphis.
It was a vastly different Memphis. Memphis is still a really unique city, and I think it's Tennessee's most famous city. It's a gritty river town, and it's unlike Nashville. Nashville is, its closest cousins would be Charlotte and Dallas and Atlanta. Memphis's closest cousins would be cities like New Orleans and St. Louis. It's just a gritty river town with a lot of character, a lot of culture, a lot of can-do, and it hasn't always had. It's always had a crime issue. All major cities have crime issues, but our crime situation in Memphis has grown exponentially to the point that it is changing Memphians' behavior, and we have to get back to Memphians feeling safe, just going about their daily routine and daily business. I moved to Memphis in 1989. I was elected to the city council in 1995, and later served on the county commission and later the election commission. So I've got a long history in Memphis politics, and we try very hard down here to make Memphis matter. And that's what I'm continuing to try to do in the state Senate.
All right. Love it. State Senator Brent Taylor out of Memphis. Thank you very much for joining us on Nashville's Morning News.